Live from downtown Vancouver at the Vancouver Film School campus, it's time for EP Live. Hey, welcome to EPN. My name is Victor Lucas, and we bring you the latest in everything cool. Happy Wednesday to you. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to have a terrific show today. We've got a great guest. Benjamin Rivers is going to join us on the big screen over here from Toronto to talk about his brand new game, Worse Than Death. But first, we have a rundown to get to, and today we are dedicating it to Derek Spillay, who says he's glad to see Vic reviewing VR games again, but where are the clips of Vic actually playing the games? Those are the best part. I actually did shoot a bit of stuff on my phone, and I thought about sending it to Blake, but when I watched they're so totally not cool shots of me. I was like, oh my God, I don't want that to be out in the public eye. I was totally slobbing out with, the hair everywhere and everything. You know what you look like when you're in VR. But I had some fun, and we're going to be talking about some VR stuff later on in the show. But first, let's get to Derek Spillay's rundown. A new version of Catwoman is going to sink her claws into Gotham City. The Batman director, Matt Reeves, has confirmed rumors that the film's new version of Catwoman will be played by actress Zoe Kravitz. She previously starred in the HBO series Big Little Lies and appeared in films like X-Men First Class and Mad Max Fury Road, and even voiced Catwoman in the animated Lego Batman movie. It's unclear how serious or campy the new live-action version of the character will be, but the film is expected to have a more noirish tone. Twilight's Robert Pattinson is already set to play the Dark Knight himself, and filming begins early next year. I can't really tell you too much about Zoe Kravitz as an actor. I saw some photos of her. She's beautiful. I think she'll be, sort of commanding the screen and has the presence to, capture all of our attention. But Matt Reeves, I trust. In Matt Reeves, I do trust. I think that guy is a great director, and I think he has cast his films wonderfully in the past. And the fact that she's already voiced Catwoman is very encouraging, and I'm getting very excited. I read on the like People Magazine or something like that, Michelle Pfeiffer has commented already and given some advice to Zoe Kravitz for playing the role of Catwoman, which is great. It's nice to see that torch being going. But you know what? Nobody is ever going to beat Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman. She was the best, and you could fight me on that. Now, apparently, what's his name? Jonah Hill has, he's walked away. He's not going to be in the new At least that's what the rumor is right now. But, Spider-Man wasn't in the MCU for a while there, too. This might all be a ploy to get us to forget about Jonah Hill, and then he'll magically appear as the Riddler or something in the new Batman movie. I think that would be a fun watch. I would very much like to see Jonah Hill in anything. He's a great actor. But we'll see. I'm very curious to see how the rest of the cast, fleshes out for the Batman. You guys know I'm going to be there as early as possible to see this movie, and I'm coming around on Robert Pattinson as the Dark Knight. I think he's going to do a good job. All right, now Analog, the company.
Just hang on a second. The audio's out of sync, so just give me 2 seconds.
Okay.
I'm not going to stop the stream.
Did I do something wrong? Did I break it?
No, we're back.
Okay, we're back. I somehow broke the internet. So that first story was all out of sync? Okay, all right. This is the story I've been waiting to talk about all day. Analog, the company that's revived classic consoles like the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, has set their sights on the Game Boy. They've announced the Analog Pocket, a new device that runs classic Game Boy cartridges with no emulation. Analog says it's compatible with all Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance cartridges out of the box. And on top of that, it will have optional adapters for other handheld systems like the Game Gear and Neo Geo Pocket Color, and the Atari Lynx is in there. There will also be an HDMI dock allowing you to play games on your TV screen. The Analog Pocket lands next year, and I almost didn't want to talk about this because they're saying they're going to have limited quantities at launch, and I want one. I want one so bad. This is a dream, right? I've got a lot of these cartridges. They're just sitting there in my library. And there's some amazing games that we have just moved right on by. We're in the new generation. Now we have Switches that can play The Witcher, which we'll be playing a little bit later. But it's a crazy world that all of these great games have not been sort of playable on modern architecture. But here comes Analog to the rescue. And I got to tell you something. You guys know I love the Mega SG and the Super NT. I am surprised I mean, I've got this segment now, the 16-bit superhero segment, but I am surprised how much I go to those machines and I turn them on and I play and I have a blast with those systems. So I think I will be equally happy to have the analog Pocket and the dock. I think that just sounds amazing. Very excited for that. No news on pre-order dates or when all that stuff's going to go live, but it's going to be available in 2020, and it's $200 US for the Pocket itself. So super psyched. Now it's looking more and more likely that the Merc with a Mouth has a future at Disney. Deadpool star Ryan Reynolds has released a photo of himself at Marvel Studios, apparently hinting that they've had meetings about future films. On top of that, Deadpool co-writer Paul Wernick has told EW that they've also had meetings with Marvel and hope to be able to keep their hard R rating in future films and maybe even use crossover characters from other Marvel movies. The Deadpool movies are now controlled by Marvel following Disney's acquisition of Fox, but no official announcements about what they plan to do with the franchise have been made. We'll let you know if that changes. Now, they announced a Blade movie is coming, which I can't wait for that. Mahershala Ali, is that right? Mahershala Ali, I love that guy, is going to be the new Blade. That's a movie that could definitely exist with a hard R rating. If they make a Moon Knight movie, that could have a hard R rating. And if they bring back the Punisher, and definitely they have to, what's the actor's name? John Bernthal. Yeah, they definitely got to cast John Bernthal. If they bring the Punisher back, that should have a hard R. And I'd love to see Bernthal and Ryan Reynolds mix it up on stage, right? Or on screen. That would be so killer. But it sounds like Ryan Reynolds, I mean, they've made so much money and everybody loves those movies and they love him as Deadpool and he loves him as Deadpool. And Ryan Reynolds is kind of writing his own sort of check in his own future now. So it would be foolish for Disney to say, no, you were part of Fox. No, we can't do that. They got to keep this rocking and rolling. And they've got lots of characters that could be fun in a kind of a hard R setting. Certainly if they put Wolverine into the mix, that might be an amazing way to introduce a new Wolverine. And even throw in the Hulk and let him go real Hulk, like just smash something. That would be crazy. No Spider-Man hard R. You just tone that down, Star Trek. Well, Venom, they could throw, well, Venom's not in the MCU. Now we're getting all crazy. The idea that Marvel would own Spider-Man again would be crazy, right? Okay, mark your calendars because Google has set a date for their cloud revolution. The new cloud-based game streaming service Stadia will begin rolling out in the U.S., Canada, and other countries on November 19th. It won't be available all at once, though. November 19th is the launch date for people who've ordered the $170 Founders Edition, which includes extra goodies like a controller and a Chromecast Ultra dongle. Oh, dongle, that's a fun word. But Google hasn't said exactly how long it will take for non-founders to be able to jump in. Once Stadia is up and running, users will be, presumably with the founders being the live beta testers, users will be able to access a library of games for a monthly subscription fee with all the number crunching done in the cloud, so you don't need to have a powerful machine to run AAA games. And Blake's question under the script bit here is, will Stadia really be a success? That is the big question mark, right? We don't know yet, but Google has stacked the deck with people. They've stacked the deck with partnerships. The fact that Red Dead Redemption 2 is going to be available here. I mean, some easy predictions, but now we have to see not only how they work with their partners, but also how they work with their own internal teams and what kinds of exclusives. It's weird that we're going to keep using the word exclusive when we're talking about online content like this, but they're paying for exclusive content. So we'll see how all of that stuff fares. But really, we just want to make sure that there isn't ridiculous lag when we try all this stuff out. I personally cannot wait to be one of those founder beta testers, and I'm hoping that it does work. I hope it rocks, and I think Google has done. Most of the storytelling has been about getting us interested, the people that are already invested in video games, that are already gamers. I can't wait till they pull some cards out of their sleeve and say, oh, yes, but wait, there's more, because Google has the bucks. They can spend on more. I think there's going to be some interesting surprises, which will appeal to us, the hardcore players, the people that love the video game industry and are watching all of its news every day. But I think they're going to reach out to people that don't watch this stuff all the time, that don't know everything. The fact that Witcher 3 just launched on the Nintendo Switch, I think that they're going to be interested in getting families playing stuff affordably, and that content could be really, really incredible because it's going to be running on super fast hardware and it's just going to rely on your internet. That's the promise. Let's see if they'll deliver. We're going to know soon. Now, speaking of streaming services, if you liked Rogue One, Disney is forcing out more of the same. The new Disney Plus series, focusing on Rogue One hero Cassian Andor, has brought aboard filmmaker Tony Gilroy to write and direct multiple episodes. Gilroy oversaw the extensive reshoots and rewrites on Rogue One, so this time around we'll get to see what he can do working with the characters from square one. Diego Luna will be back in the lead role alongside Alan Tudyk as his robot sidekick K2SO. Shooting begins next year, and the show will be available exclusively on Disney Plus. And Blake hates this movie. He's not a fan of this. So his question under the script is, Cassian Andor an interesting enough character to sustain a TV series? Yes, he is. My argument with Rogue One is that's a movie that gets better with every viewing because there's lots of little details and so many characters. My problem seeing it the first time was like, who are these people? They were just thrown at you and then they're all dead. It's like, I don't know anything about it. But when you see it a few times, you start to recognize the nuance and the little details, and I like all of those characters, including Cassian Andor, who I thought was too skinny for his clothes in the movie when I first saw it, and Johnny Millennium, who I saw it with, was like, "What are you talking about? What a weird complaint." But I feel like the character does have some darkness and some virtue, and I love the actor. I think Diego Luna is a very interesting actor. I love Alan Tudyk. I have for a long time, ever since he was Wash on Firefly. Before that, he was in A Knight's Tale, and he was great in A Knight's Tale. He's one of those great performers where you can introduce him into anything, and he makes it better. And I'm psyched that K2SO gets to live again. I'm psyched that Cassian gets to live again, and we get to see a little bit of the backstory. And Tony Gilroy, everybody talked about Gareth Edwards, but this guy obviously put in a lot to make Rogue One rock. For those that feel like it did rock, I am one of those. I love that movie. So, yeah, I'm super excited about this, and it's one of the reasons why, Disney Plus seems irrefutable right now, at least to me. All right, you guys, let me know what you thought about all of this stuff in the comments below. That's it for our rundown. Now it's time to take a look at this day and everything cool. Welcome to This Day and Everything Cool for October 16th. On this day in 1923, the Magic Kingdom began. 21-year-old animator Walt Disney and his older brother Roy founded the Disney Brothers Cartoon Studio, which later became known as the Walt Disney Company. Walt Disney had already been working as an animator for several years and created the company as a way to produce and sell his own animated short films to distributors. His first project was a series of Alice in Wonderland shorts featuring a blend of animation and live action, and a few years later, in 1927, Disney created his first original character, the big-eared Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. Oswald was a big hit with audiences, but unfortunately, Disney lost the rights to the character after a legal battle with his distributor, Universal Pictures. So going forward, he created another big-eared character, Mickey Mouse. The first Mickey cartoons hit theaters in 1928, and Disney saw more and more success with his animated projects, leading to the creation of more original characters like Pluto and Goofy. He also began experimenting with new technology like recorded sound and Technicolor, and released the world's first feature-length animated movie, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, in 1937. All right, you guys, we've got a great guest on the show today. His name is Benjamin Rivers, and he works almost in solitude. He does collaborate with some people, and we're going to find out about that. He's got a brand new video game that's out there, and this guy floats between games and comic books and other media out there. It is called Worse Than Death, and Benjamin Rivers joins us right now. How are you, sir? Good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's always great to see your smiling face. It's amazing that you work independently and alone a big chunk of time, and you still come up smiling.
That's right. Yeah, there's a lot of pain sort of in the middle and at the end, but after it's all done, it's all good.
What is the most exciting time for you? When you're dreaming it up?
Yeah, there's like a bookend of when you first get the idea and you know that it's something you like, and then the part where you release it to the world and that frantic sort of fear at the end. Those are the two most exciting parts. And in the middle is the development forest where you're lost in the dark for a long time and you're not sure which way is what.
There's a lot of different ways that you can approach building a game, especially in the independent world and where you have a lot of autonomy. And some people subscribe to the philosophy of doing a lot of market research and kind of knowing beforehand that this is something that's going to sell for sure. And some people just try different things. They experiment and they throw them out into the marketplace. Where do you track?
Well, so we do both, but we also know that as much as you can be prepared and you think you know what people are going to want, by the time you've had that decision and sort of written that down, something could 100% change. So at some point, you have to trust your gut.
That's awesome. Well, you've had some big hits as an indie developer with Home and what is it, Alone with You? Is that the other one?
That's correct.
Yeah. And talk to me a little bit about your early days getting into game development and seeing some of these games flourish and succeed for you and what that meant for you.
Well, every time a game goes out and like somebody plays it, it's always a huge surprise and it's a huge honor because when you're living with something, like you say, mostly in solitude, you never know how people are going to take it. But
Sure.
so when we started doing stuff back in 2007 or so, when the indie scene here in Toronto started to kick up, learning how to make games, trying to understand what that meant, like the fact that things could be put out there commercially was just becoming new. That was all awesome. And then Home was like a freak accident where just before it released, like a year before it released, it got all this press coverage, and we went, "Oh crap! People know about this now," and and now we got to do something because I guess we're going to release this for real. And then the sort of pressure to actually make like a quote unquote commercial game began, and we did it. We released it, and we were lucky that it was a big hit.
That's awesome. The pixel art phenomenon doesn't seem to be going away, and I know that you've been a big proponent of pixel art and making games that look like they could have been crafted in a different era. Has that love for that kind of art style always been a part of what brought you to games, and you just wanted to preserve that? Is that something that calls to you?
Yeah, it's one of those things that's just part of my DNA. Like the first games that I thought up were in television games in the
cool.
early to mid 80s. So
Nice.
when I was drawing out what I thought a video game should look like, it was based on games I was playing at the time, which was in television. And there's still part of me that remembers all these very like primal elements of extremely old fashioned type of games. And I love what they do to your imagination. Love the fact that you can interpret them differently. And I like that people put a lot of their own heart and soul into what you see. And that will always have a place, I think, in game design.
Totally. Well, there's a lot of correlation. I think you also have a big fascination and a love for the comic book medium. And I think that there is a terrific correlation between the work that you do in video games and comic books. Even, I mean, you've got sort of comic panel story bits in Worse Than Death, but even in the game art, even when you're controlling the character, it still feels like they could be panels within a comic book. Is that a deliberate thing for you?
Absolutely. Like one of the original tomes of sort of comic design and how it works, like understanding comics, that's how I learned to interpret everything visually. And what you learn about there about making things iconic, making things readable, learning how to make space between, images and actions and time, they apply both to comics and to games. And sometimes we design stuff and we make it full high res and we make it very explicit. And I don't quite like it as much as doing certain pixel art takes on it because you get more of the interpretation and imagination aspect.
That's awesome. Okay, well, take us into your process a little bit, and then we're going to dive into the story of Worse Than Death and everything. But I know this a bit because I've spent some time with you, and I watched you do some work on this game, and it was amazing. But for those that don't know, how do you go about building a game like Worse Than Death?
So previously when we'd made stuff, like I was always trapped at my desk, essentially, always coding or doing art on a tablet or something like that. And the unique opportunity we have at Worse Than Death was that I got an iPad Pro. Actually, my wife, Nancy, who makes games with me, made me get one. And then this app called Procreate came out, and it was the first sort of professional drawing app that I had used. And it was recommended to me by comic book artist friends. And once I used that, I said, oh man, I think we can like do something really cool with this. And after some tests, we said, we could just do art on this and I don't have to be stuck at my desk all the time. So that's when we realized we could do this full comic book suite of art and cutscenes and all these sort of puzzles sequences. And rather than just be doing art, pixel by pixel for backgrounds or whatnot, or just doing it like on a Wacom tablet, I got to take an iPad out and just draw the way I normally do, and it made everything very different because no longer it felt like I was just getting things done because I had to do it. I realized like I can get things done way faster, and I have more ideas, and things are easier to implement, and I'm used to this process from being a comic artist and working on other creative aspects. So we just got to do more stuff. So there's like way more puzzles, way more sort of content in the game because it was way easier to do this time around.
That's amazing. Do the people at Procreate know that you did this?
Yeah, we got in touch with them pretty early once we had spoken to Apple about what we were doing and saw that we were doing it specifically for games because a lot of what they had been posting was about other sorts of art, especially fine art, and they
Yeah.
thought it was actually pretty cool.
That's awesome, man. I know that one of the things that you do, let's talk about you and your passion for games because you stream games all the time, don't you? You go back into your library and you love to sort of acknowledge and appreciate the retro stuff. Is that, some kind, do you get inspiration from that, or is this a way to kind of connect with the players of your games? Why do you do that?
A lot of it is because I have, like you say, this catalog of games that I love, but I think about them like 24/7. Like, but their design, who made them, why they were made, when they were made, all the little things that you notice. And
Yes.
at some point, you just got to share that with people. So whenever I stream games, I always talk about the history. I notice all these design things, and I point out a bunch of lessons that I've learned and things that you may not notice, and try to do like a deep dive as you're playing it. Because when I play with other design, like game design friends, that's what we're all pointing out to each other. Like, did you
Right.
realize how well this level was laid out? Did you understand this trick that they used? And that's what makes me want to go back and say, okay, for this next area we're going to do in the game, remember that lesson you learned from Quake or Doom or whatever it was, and find a way to implement that.
Are you one of the CRT purists out there? Do you get the classic consoles and the original cartridges? It's got to be on CRT, and then somehow you digitally get it out onto Twitch, or how do you do it?
So I actually have it's increasingly intense setup in the living room where we have like a big 4K TV, but I do have classic consoles with expensive cables and special boxes so that I'm playing off like an original Sega CDX with a special RGB cable to a 4K TV, and it's all running at like beautiful resolution with wireless controllers. I have unfortunately become that guy now, and it's awesome.
I'm that guy too. I just reported on the analog, the Pocket, the new
Yeah,
Game Boy thing, which I bet you're excited for.
extremely excited. Yes.
Do you wish that your games could be Game Boy games?
Well, Home was actually, if you look at the original resolution of Home, it technically fits in the Game Boy screen, and that was a bit of the initial challenge. So sometimes when I work on a game design, I think, could I reduce this down to a Game Boy game, and would it still be good? If so, then the design works.
That's terrific. Okay, so Worse Than Death, is it tied to the narrative of any of your other games, or is it a completely fresh story?
I will tell you that it is a fresh story, but if you pay attention and you look hard enough, you might find another answer to that question as well.
So there's a Benjamin Rivers verse that
That's
you're
right.
building.
The
Yes.
cinematic universe. Give us like 10 years, people will start to notice. It'll be great.
That's fantastic. Well, take us into the tale a little bit. What did you want to create with Worse Than Death?
Sure. So it's about a high school reunion that goes horribly wrong. That's kind of how we describe it. And it's about this woman named Holly who comes back to her small town to go to a high school, which nobody ever wants to go to, or a high school reunion rather. And what Nancy and I wanted to do was make a horror game that had no subtlety whatsoever. We wanted something that was like an X-Files episode where some big bang happens, the plot suddenly hangs the left, everyone's running through their lives, and then it's just constant panic from that moment on. So rather than do this game like I often want to do with like these slow pans and this real slow burn about these dark, dreadful scenes, I really just wanted to make something really impactful and fun and kind of heavy metal where things go sideways real quick, and then at that point you're just constantly running for your life, and everything gets more and more gruesome and messed up until the very end.
The run button plays a big part in this game, doesn't it?
Yeah, and a lot of that was realizing when you look at a lot of horror games, especially 2D ones, most of them are very, very slow.
Yeah.
And even traditional ones like Silent Hill or Fatal Frame, they don't ever get you moving too quickly.
Yeah.
But I noticed a lot of the newer horror games that were often first person that involved a lot of hiding, they often prioritize like those panicked moments where you're just running for your life and you don't know. And I realized that's a lot of fun. Like that adrenaline rush just naturally comes.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to make another game where you only walked. I wanted you to be running or like wanted to run constantly.
I'm having this flashback from like 2001 where I interviewed a developer at Interplay who was making a game called Run Like Hell. It was a survival horror game, and it was all about running away from monsters. That's awesome. I also noticed, was this an homage to the Rolling Thunder franchise where you're ducking into cover and getting away from the monster and stuff?
That is a very good call and a good reference. I didn't consciously think about that, but now that you mentioned it, that is one of the earliest, or probably the earliest version of that mechanic. So yeah, that's probably where I got it from. I just didn't realize it.
Well, yeah, it was definitely emulated a lot. I don't know if Bionic Commando pulled that as well, but I remember loving doing that back in the day. It's so cool, right, that we live in this era where you can connect those threads, and a lot of those games, especially this year, seem to be available to us.
Yeah,
it's pretty rad.
But there's always so many things. Like I think the game that I thought of the most when I initially did like the hide in the background mechanic was, oddly enough, Blackthorn. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I love that game. That was a Blizzard game.
That was the first console game I played that had that mechanic, and I went, oh, you can use a 2D space and have a 3D element, and it's kind of just one button.
That's so cool. Do you ever look up some of these developers and some of the people that worked on some of this classic stuff? And I don't know if there's any kind of a fraternity there or any kind of connection at all to some of your heroes in 2D design.
I'm always looking people up. There's some people actually in the 3D space that I have met and looked up, specifically Sam Barlow, who worked on Silent Hill Shattered Memories.
I know Sam, he's great.
Telling Lies and her story, but those games were also like big inspirations in terms of like the neat narrative storytelling that Home and other games that we've done have used. And yeah, I always say, like, if there's someone you like and you can find their email address, always email them. Sometimes people email me back, sometimes they don't. But I always want to say, I love this like crazy thing that you did 20 years ago when everyone thought it was impossible.
I think that's especially true in the video game industry, isn't it? I mean, it's such a collaborative medium, and there are some out-of-whack egos in this space for sure, but it's generally, there's a lot of unsung heroes and a lot of people that did, revolutionary work that people just don't know who they are. And I think it is nice to receive those emails out of the blue, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, there's lots of people, even here in Canada, who have been part of huge games and have done amazing things that are, just like random credits on a cartridge that most people don't realize. And then once you learn about them, you're like, that guy programmed the entirety of Doom on Super Nintendo? Like, what?
Yes. I was out for dinner with a buddy of mine. This is sort of an offshoot, but he casually mentioned that he illustrated and animated Mario working with Nintendo on a game that was made here in Vancouver, and he was the first developer outside of Japan to ever do that with. And I'm like, how do you just tell me this at dinner? This is ridiculous. He just drops that offhand. But it's true. Like, there's a lot of incredible work out there that goes unrecognized, but becomes the influence and the impetus for a young developer like yourself to go off and dream and make it happen.
Well, thank you. Thank you for calling me young, too.
Well, you're younger than me, so you get one of those. You've launched this game already on Apple.
That's right.
On iOS. Is it out on Android as well?
It's not on Android. We launched on Canada, actually, on iOS. And then this past week, it was on Switch. We launched on Switch, Xbox, PS4, Steam, and Humble.
Holy crap. Is it exclusive to iOS, or will it also come to Android eventually?
We likely will keep it on iOS.
Okay, so you have a pretty good partnership going with Apple?
Yeah, Apple really seems to like the game, and they've been really good to us.
Oh, that's great. Was there ever a thought that it might be part of the Apple Arcade offerings, or are you working with them on anything in that direction that you can tell us about?
The timing was a little weird because we were sort of already in the middle of doing a bunch of stuff with them, and it definitely would have been cool, but we were able to launch with them and with some sort of fanfare several months ago.
Yeah.
And the good thing about that was that we definitely got a lot of sort of love from them. As you know, like Apple Arcade launched with 100 games or so.
Yeah.
So maybe it was kind of better that we sort of had a little bit of an oasis to ourselves just a little bit before that.
That's wonderful that you got a Canada Day shout out to. I think that's important and super cool. Way to go, Apple. That's great. Is it surreal to you that you made the game on an iPad and people are playing it on an iPad?
Yeah, that's actually the part of it that I like the most because one of the things that Nancy and I talk about all the time is how to make games. We think there's a lot of opportunities to do things differently, just because there's often like a an assumption about how you make a game, the equipment you need, where you have to do it, and part of what I do coming from a design and illustration background is just like I just kind of ignore all that stuff and we say like, can we like, could I just make the next game entirely on an iPad? Because that would be sweet. That would be better for me because then I can go wherever and not have to worry about it. So the fact that yes, it is sort of like this weird closed loop of creativity is kind of fun.
Yeah, it'd be weird to take a laptop and a tablet, sort of drawing tablet, into a cafe,
Yeah,
but not
you see,
weird,
you
right?
see
To
that
take,
all the time. It freaks me out.
but not so weird if you have one of the Apple Pencils and an iPad and you're
That's
able to
right.
do. Yeah. Do you do all the programming yourself too?
Yeah, so for Worse Than Death, I did all the development, but there's always people who help out.
Yep.
And we actually work with a company here called Giffen Interactive, who's worked with a bunch of other developers, and they helped us do the Xbox port because I mean, we're launching on three consoles simultaneously. It's only so many hours in the day,
Yeah.
and they knew Xbox better than we did, so they helped us kind of just get things up to snuff real quick.
That's cool.
But all the basic stuff is just us, yeah.
So, how many games now have you made? Not alone, because your wife Nancy. Hello, Nancy. I know she's somewhere out there. Hopefully, she watches this at some point. Hello, Nancy. You're an unsung hero as well. But how many games have you made as this entity, as this very small entity?
Commercially, this is our third one. And then we made three or four small, weird experimental things before this. Just weird stuff, like this game called The Missing that I did, like jam games. This game called The Ascent was one of our first ones. This like terrible platforming game, but it had like this dark story, and I got my friend to voice act for it. It was pretty hilarious. But the first game we actually released and finished was this weird adventure game version of Snow, which is a graphic novel I made many years ago.
Very cool. That's awesome. And so now what do? You've shipped the game. It's on every platform it's going to be on, likely.
That's right.
For a while,
Game,
anyways. And
we're gonna go
so,
backport it to game.com. We're just gonna do a bunch of crazy stuff with it. Get on a toaster, Alexa.
hit your backlog a little bit.
Yeah,
I am looking forward to the analog pocket version of Worse Than Death next year.
that would be amazing. It could totally be done. Home could be done for sure. Worse than death, we'll definitely have to talk about that.
That would be amazing, brother. Are you now going back to a comic book, or are you in the conceptual stage for the next video game project? What are you going to do?
We always have like a slow ramp down period where we kind of just take stock of what's going on, what happens. There's always like updates to do sort of at the very end, but a lot of it is to take all the lessons and say like, okay, what do we do to make the next time better or easier or smarter or whatnot? So after Alone with You, I think I was 2 days before I started coming up with a new game, and then Nancy was like, no, you have to take a break. So we did. And this time it was similar. It took 3 days and I was already starting to jam on some ideas. And we said, no, we're going to take a break and then we'll come back to this in the new year.
Yeah,
And
you
just
got to force yourself to just chill. And I guess this must be a pretty cool time for you, too, because you hear from people that are finding your game and you talk with people that are reviewing it. And this is, I guess, a time to kind of collect the feedback from people, right?
yeah, and the weird thing is like you can have as many people as you want during development tell you they think something is good or bad or give you feedback throughout. But it never feels like it means anything until like the mysterious public gets their hands on it. And if some random person on Twitter says like, hey, I played your game, I think it's great, it feels amazing. And if a review comes out and someone said, and they get it and they're hitting all the points that you want them to hit and they're understanding it and they're syncing with sort of the intent of it, then that feels great.
Awesome.
But a million people could tell you that while you're working on it, you just don't believe them. It's just a
Awesome.
weird side effect of how this works.
I love it, dude. Okay, I'm going to give you a little reviews on the run opportunity here. What should people be playing other than your game?
Oh God, there's a game coming out on Switch on November 7th called Tokyo Dark Remembrance. It's by friends of ours who are developers in Japan. They originally released the game, I think a year and a half ago or 2 years ago on Steam, and it's like a director's cut remaster. It's a super dark detective, like really dark horror adventure game with sort of visual novel elements and an amazing soundtrack. And that's the number one game I'm looking forward to this season.
What's it called?
Tokyo Dark Remembrance.
Tokyo Dark Remembrance. Okay, you're a comic book fan as well. What should people be reading?
Oh man, I actually just finished reading the sort of House of X, Powers of X thing because I hadn't read
Cool.
any X-Men stuff in a long time, and that was cool. But what I'm actually looking forward to is checking out the new Blade Runner 2049 comic. I missed a few issues, and it looks amazing. The art looks amazing. I'm hoping it's good,
You
but
got my attention.
it looks like a winner. Yeah,
Yeah, dude, that's great. Benjamin, I love having you on, and if it's all right with you, I'm going to reach out in a couple of months and we'll have you back.
sounds great.
All right, pal. Good luck with Worse Than Death. Thank you so much, sir. All
Thank
right.
you, everyone.
And you guys can check out the game on virtually every platform. But something that I've been checking things out, checking out some stuff on, is my various VR headsets. Let's take a look. Guys, I've been getting out of the rain, and I have been lost in the cyberspace of virtual reality over the last few days. Of course, if you've been checking out the channel, you saw my reviews of Asgard's Wrath and Vader Immortal Episode 2. Those were both quite fun, and it was fun to kind of escape into those titles. I also wanted to check out some of the other VR experiences. I've been lost in a lot of flat screen video game fun over the last several months. And I thought it was time to do kind of a checkup and jump back in and play some VR titles and see what the experience was across the Oculus Quest, which is fairly new, standalone, doesn't require in-room sensors, it doesn't require a cable, it's got cameras built into it. I've also got the Oculus Rift, the original one. I have not upgraded to the Oculus Rift S, and I've also got the PlayStation VR. So I tried 3 of the most easily accessible VR experiences and some of the software that I hadn't touched in a while, just to kind of see how VR felt in 2019. Jumping back into VR after this time away, I have to say that the experience was very pleasant. It was very fun, partially due to the ease of use of the Quest. The Quest, I think, is the easiest one to tell people if they're interested in VR that that's the one that you should check out. Not just because the hardware is so cool and it's so effortless. You just put it on your head and the cameras basically do all the work for you in order to keep you alive and keep you safe. But there's also a really good investment in games from Oculus itself, and also ports of Rift titles and games that you might have seen on PlayStation VR. Like, you can play Moss on the Oculus Quest, and Moss is an unbelievable fantasy action-adventure platformer that's just so beautifully rendered, and it's just a great little story. It's not an especially long experience, and when you get to the end you want more, but it's a beautiful game, and it's wonderful on the Quest. You can play games like Beat Sabre, which I think is probably the undisputed killer app for all the VR platforms. It's one that you can put onto anybody, and you say you have 2 lightsabers and you gotta beat in time to the rhythm as all of these little objects are floating towards you. So you gotta destroy all these boxes and things. You have to groove with it, and it's super easy and super fun. Buying more of the music starts to add up a little bit, but you're going to get hooked on this game no matter what platform you play it on. You play it on the Quest or the Rift or the PlayStation VR or the Vive. Wherever you play Beat Saber, you're going to love that game. Now, I would argue that Asgard's Wrath is probably state-of-the-art for what a VR game is in 2019. I think Oculus and Sanzaru, the developer, just did an amazing job putting you in the boots of a god, but also a warrior, and also in command of animal troops and exploring dungeons. It's so freaking cool. And it not only is a fun game, but it also shows you how you can think differently about how you play video games. You can be sort of in this first-person combat situation, but you can also be this omnipotent creature that has control over the environment. Wonderful, wonderful experience. I wanted to jump back in and play something that recently moved into VR, but it's a game that's been kicking around for a while, and that was No Man's Sky. So I booted up No Man's Sky last night on my PlayStation VR. I was expecting it to be cool. I was not expecting it to make me gasp. I was not expecting it to be like transformative and just completely awe-inspiring, but that's what it was. Even, you know, with the aliasing and some of the rudimentary visuals, you can certainly feel that this is a game aching to turn up the dials so that it just looks crystal clear and beautiful. But even with its rough edges, No Man's Sky in VR is astounding. It's just amazing. You are on a planet and you're cruising around mining for different materials so that you can get your ship to fly up into space, and then you get into your ship and you fly into space, and it feels like you're in space. You've got your ship all around you. You can look behind you and see the foils on the back and the wings on the sides. And it's so immersive. You are completely transported into another galaxy, man. And then you realize, wait a minute, this whole universe is mine to explore. I can fly anywhere I want. I can fly to that planet. I can fly to that planet. I can mine these asteroids. I can explore that thing. And it is unbelievable, and it took everything I had to stop myself from getting completely lost in this game and forgetting everything else that's on my to-do list and the other games that I gotta review. Holy crap, if you've got this game already, and you can play this on the Rift, and you can play this on the PlayStation VR and the Vive, and soon on the Quest, it's the full game in VR. And you can say that about things like Skyrim as well, or Borderlands 2. There's something about No Man's Sky and its mind-expanding ambition that we've created and generated all of these planets and all of these vehicles, and now there's multiplayer, but now you can explore them as if you are truly in a suit cruising through the universe. Incredible and an impeccable experience. I also checked out Blood and Truth on the PlayStation VR. Now, this was a heavily hyped cinematic experience that came out earlier this year, but I finally got to it, and I had to plug in my Move controllers and charge them. I was not happy about that. I hate those Move controllers. They just feel so antiquated. Even the charge cable is from the PlayStation 3 era, and we're at the end of the PlayStation 4 era. So it's just like, oh my God, I gotta get these charged up. So I did that while I got lost in No Man's Sky. So they were charged, and I was able to play this game. You can play it with a controller, but then you've got your hands locked together. And this is a game that kind of moves for you. It's almost akin to the Time Crisis games that Namco used to make with the light gun. It's like a light gun shooter. You're going from point to point to point, and you can press the X button when you want to move from node to node, and it's hunting targets. It's all the stuff that you might be able to do with your hands, up to and including climbing up ladders, or scaling along ledges, or climbing into air vents. And then there's some really, really intelligent mechanics, even with this limited mobility, where you feel like a badass, blowing away all kinds of bad guys and shooting grenades that are thrown at you out of thin air. And actually, you can pick up a grenade and pull the pin and throw that as well. And the acting and the performance stuff that's in here, it's really, really well crafted. You really do feel like you're in the middle of an action picture set in London where you're just taking care of atrocious London gangsters. And it's a lot of fun to kill them all. It's epic and filled with massive explosions and lots of slow-mo and a lot of sass and some wit. And you could actually lean over in a car and stare into the driver's eyes, and they'll finally look at you and say, what are you doing? This is weird. This is creepy. I like Blood and Truth. It's a lot of fun.
Hey, fucking fool!
We are also getting a lot of shovelware and a lot of stuff that reminds me of a lot of the Wii minigame collections. Like, I played this game called Elven Archer, which is kind of like what that VR lab that's included with the Vive, that free piece of software where you could do an archery demo. It's kind of like that, and there's a lot of archery demos actually across the VR landscape, but I played this Elven Archer game and it was just so rudimentary and drab. Clearly what's happening is that developers, when you look at a game like Asgard's Wrath or even Vader Immortal, you can see that there is a maturity happening where people are really understanding what's achievable, what this technology kind of allows. So we're getting a lot more interesting software. I feel like what VR needs, now that we've started to kind of reach this hill and this crescendo of fantastic hardware, you know, with super fast frame rates and super high resolution, now it's time for the marquee software to really come out front and center. Asgard's Wrath, Blood and Truth, No Man's Sky VR experience. It doesn't need to come out at the pace of the traditional video game space, but there needs to be a little bit more. And I still say that Star Wars, it's sitting right there. It's that nugget, that perfect IP. Make us X-Wing in VR. Make us that game. Remake the original X-Wing with all the voice work and all the stuff and all the storytelling. Make it in VR. People will go nuts for that, especially after getting a little taste of the spacefaring that's available to us in No Man's Sky.
Your training begins now.
So what are my thoughts on VR? I feel like it's still incredibly indulgent. I know that there's a lot of marketing videos out there of people trying on headsets in a room, and there's even games like the bomb defusable game where everybody's got to talk in a room, and that all sounds really charming. But I think it's a lot more difficult than that to bring people together around a VR headset and watch one person wear it while everybody waits for it. I think it's incredibly personal, and I think you escape from the rest of the people in your life when you're in VR. You escape reality. I mean, you're in a totally different reality. So I feel like there's an implied selfishness to the experience of VR, and that's a bit of a holdback. But you can have this incredible solitary experience. All of these hardware manufacturers, including Sony, are at least rumored to be moving towards the Oculus Quest direction, where you're not going to have to be tethered to any external device at all. And it's interesting that the Quest has gone in the other direction. At the recent Oculus Connect event that they had, they said, well, we're going to let you plug in a USB-C cable into your completely autonomous Oculus Quest platform and plug that into a PC, and now you can play Rift games on your Oculus Quest, which is insane, which is really cool. That allows Quest owners the ability to play an incredible experience like Asgard's Wrath. Now, I do think that the tethered experience is very limiting. I think that you need excellent motion tracking controllers like, you know, what Vive provided initially, and then what I think Oculus has one-upped with the Touch. So, you know, when I look at my experience with VR and the games that I played, and I feel like the Quest is that sweet spot. It's not unreasonably priced for the amount of hardware that you get. There's a pretty good software selection. You can tether it and have the Rift experience, which is definitely a boost up in terms of fidelity and library. And the camera tracking just makes it so ridiculously fun. I am super excited to see what 2020 provides. Likely 2021. I think that PlayStation's going to put the pause button on VR until they launch PlayStation 5, and then we'll see PlayStation VR 2 in 2021. And by that point, all of the other players will have caught up with up to 4K resolution and 120 frames per second on the screens. I think we're going to see just crazy, crazy technology in the VR space. As it sits today, I think the Quest is a pretty hard system to kind of refute. It's really damn cool. We're still on the road. We haven't quite got there. We're not at the holodeck, but VR is definitely very, very fun. All right, we are back at its Let's Play and Chat. Our friend Jason is back. How are you, my friend?
Thank you for having me.
Good to see you. We're playing The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt Definitive Edition, so it has all the expansions and stuff. We're going to get through it in the next 15 minutes, the whole game. You guys ready? Here is our speed run of The Witcher 3. Go! Jason, go! No, we're showing it off on the Nintendo Switch. This is new to this platform. Just came out yesterday, and I was very excited to check this out. It's something that will blow my mind when I'm playing it on planes. We've got a trip to Japan coming up pretty soon, so there's going to be a lot of game time, and I'm definitely looking forward to playing something like this on the long haul. But Jason's diving in, so this is more just to kind of get a feel of how it looks and how it runs. This is obviously the docked version of the game. It would all look a little bit crisper in handheld mode. But this is a Let's Play and Chat segment. So we do the playing, you do the chatting. If you've got any questions or comments, go ahead and ask us. I started to type in to Miss Hojat. I have played Lone Echo and Echo Arena, and they're incredible. Super, super cool. Yeah, that's what's the name of the developer again? That's the Lone Echo games.
How many times do
they did the God of War portable games. These guys will tell me. Ready at Dawn, yeah, they're amazing. I love those guys. They're incredibly committed to making cool experiences, and then Oculus. This is what I love about Oculus, actually, is that they're investing in great ideas, and Asgard's Wrath, I think, is one of the latest, and the Oculus Quest. They're not giving up on this. They're using all that Facebook money, and they're throwing it at cool projects, and making stuff that matters and sticking with it. You know, the fact that Jason Rubin is there, and the fact that John Carmack is there, and they've got lots of other vets that work in the Oculus division. I think we're going to be seeing some really, really cool stuff from those guys. I mean, we already are seeing some really cool stuff. But I like all that stuff. Question from Nintendo Boy 17. Vic, if you had waited, would you do a versus between Witcher 3 and Dragon Quest 11 on Switch, being that they are both ports from higher-end systems? That's a great idea. I don't think that it's too late to do that. Versus we used to run as a segment in the show, even after we had done individual reviews, especially when we went to Reviews on the Run Daily. Maybe I will do that, but I am inundated right now with lots of things to kind of keep up on, but that is a very good one. I will definitely put that into the think tank right there. I like that a lot. I'm so glad that the Analog Pocket is a thing. I've always wanted a backlit solution to play Neo Geo Pocket Color games. This is from Abby Jameson. You guys didn't see my face today, but I think if you know me, you probably could have predicted what my face was looking like when I got that email from Analog.
Take off the blindfold.
I'm super excited. I had people tweeting at me, "Are you getting this thing?" And honestly, I didn't really want to talk about it too much because I don't want them to sell out. So the second they're available, I'm getting one. I can't freaking wait for that. I'm psyched that I'll be able to get adapters and play my Lynx games again on better, because I have all those old. I have all that old hardware, and I have the little GBA Advance where you could flip the screen, and you got that tiny little, and it looks cool, but yeah, it's so rinky-dinky, you know. I want it to pop and be super backlit and be beautiful and current, and the fact that I can dock it and run all that stuff on television, I am so fired up for that. I love the Mega SG and the Super NT. Analog Pocket would be great for HD capturing. Yes, of course, that as well, Nintendo Boy. I think Oculus will need to match the Index for me to buy it, sadly. A fat chimp saying that.
Of course.
Yeah, the Index looks amazing. I don't have one of those. I don't have the new Cosmos, the new Vive Cosmos. I've got the Vive and the Rift, and I think the Rift 2 is going to be coming soon, so I'll talk about that. And I've got the Quest, and I've got PlayStation VR, and it feels like I've got a lot of conduits into VR, and I think, like a lot of you, you're all waiting for that, oh my god, I can't live without it kind of machine. And I don't know if that fully exists yet.
Cut it out.
I think the Quest is the closest. I think that if you're curious about VR and you've got $500 that you want to throw in that direction for hardware, around $500, the Quest is that decision, you know. PlayStation VR would probably be the second choice, but you'd also need the PS4 Pro. I would recommend that you have the Pro to run it. And then it starts to get pricey, and there has been a noticeable drop-off in VR Grid. You can correct me if I'm wrong here, but there's been a noticeable drop-off on the marquee cascade of games in VR that we had a couple of years ago as the PSVR was launching. You know, there was a lot more momentum and a lot more buzz. I'm surprised, honestly, that there aren't more games for the Vive and the Valve kind of world that are exclusive to them, or that they are really getting behind and marketing and putting a ton of buzz around. It feels like the biggest stuff that's coming out in VR game-wise is from PlayStation or Oculus, and that's fine. But we still could use, you know,
I'm very sorry, Uncle Vesemir.
I think not just game brands, but brands that we are fully cognizant of and invested in and aware of, with Arkham Asylum caliber content. Like Batman VR was pretty cool, but it would have been better if it was closer to Asgard's Wrath, you know. Anyways, big games are coming out less and less for sure. VR Grid's backing me up there. Iron Man VR could be a turning point for sure. I mean, that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's, you know, there was this misnomer with video games that the licensed stuff was really killing the credibility of the medium, and that there was a lot of shovelware associated with a lot of licensed stuff, and for a big chunk of time you could say that was true. Although it is very interesting. I'm doing this 16-bit superhero thing on a regular basis now. It's very interesting to go back to the licensed games from an era where, you know, I'll check out the Wikipedia listing or whatever, and they have like, how was this received back in the day, and it got a 2 out of 5 from Next Gen magazine or something. And I play it today, and it's like, this is fun. It's not amazing, but it's fun, and it's like a time capsule representation of what these characters were like back then, and there's value in that. And I feel like the industry has been so quick to kind of define its own stories and its own characters, partially because it's expensive to license stuff, but also because there's been such bad buzz around licensed stuff over the years. But I think Arkham changed all that. Spider-Man has changed all that. Presumably Marvel's Avengers will change all that. The Lego stuff has changed all that. There's lots of good current things that you can point at where it's like, yeah, these are amazing recreations of properties that I love. And there are also lots of classic games that you can point to that were solid, but were maybe overlooked because they didn't quite compete with Mario and Sonic. And that's fine. That discourse was fine back then. But I feel like if you're living in a cluttered media age like we are now, where everybody is a broadcaster and every device has you pointing at something else right now, why not flow with the stream and build game properties that are already aligned with lots of awareness out there? The fact that we don't have a Blade game announced on the same day that the Blade movie is announced is silly to me. It's like, well, here's your Captain Marvel movie. Why don't we have that, or a game? Why don't we have that? Why don't we have an awesome Wonder Woman game? Why don't we have the Cassian Andor video game? It just doesn't make sense to me that Blake is shaking his head, does not want he will not play or purchase the Cassian Andor game. Why don't we have a Picard game? Where you can play as an older character with some amazing flashbacks that let you play interactive moments from Star Trek The Next Generation. I know that it's dangerous territory, and I know that there aren't enough developers to do all of that, but I feel like some of that knob turning and development sort of investment would bring more people to the medium. That's exactly what happened with Spider-Man. Exactly. More people probably picked up the PlayStation 4 controller when that game came out than almost anything else in PlayStation's history, I would imagine. I don't know what the numbers are, but it was the fastest selling game, and and it deserved every accolade it got. Okay. Iron Man will be the next big game. It might be buried launching a week from The Last of Us 2. Yeah, Blair Farrell, you're right, and I don't think it's going to have the gameplay or the staying power of The Last of Us 2 or the emotional weight of The Last of Us 2. And every media outlet in the world and streamer out there is going to be focused on The Last of Us 2. But Iron Man will pop because it's Iron Man, and it's a good fit for VR. Marco A says, I tried the Index. The finger stuff is cool, but there's still a bit of learning curve to use it. Super psyched for this next gen, but I'm more psyched on proper cordless, lighter systems. I don't know what the solution is. Maybe it's. I didn't really talk about this in my catch-up piece right there, but one of the things that I have noticed about the Quest is, and the Rift as well a little bit, which I'm curious about the Rift S, is they're comfortable for a while, but if you're in these things for hours, they start to weigh on your face. And I had red marks all around my face after playing the Quest for hours in the summertime, and I woke up with those red marks, and I had them for half the day. The next day, I'm like, I don't want to tell the world that I play VR when I'm not playing VR. I don't want to wear it like a mask. Although I readjusted it again, and it didn't happen again the second time. I found that the PlayStation VR is the most comfortable out of all the VR headsets. Let's see. Question from Farmer. Do you think that Sony and Microsoft push to make a new console and release as soon as possible to stop Nintendo from becoming the dominant console, as Switch has to drop features and graphics? I think it was time for these guys to get us into the next generation. I think NVIDIA sort of moved the needle with ray tracing and showing us what's possible on high-end PCs. And whenever you see the graphic horsepower of the chip makers that work on graphics cards kind of show us what modern PCs are capable of, that's when the console companies historically make a decision, okay, it's time to buy into some of this technology and bring it out at a lower price. So we're going to have some gorgeous looking visuals and some incredible horsepower. with the tools to stream and presumably have some kind of AR or VR connectivity as well, it was time. I don't think. I think that everybody gives mad respect to Nintendo for carving out the Nintendo industry. It's almost like they operate independently of the other guys, partially due to their less reliance on horsepower and graphic fidelity, and more on customer satisfaction and ease of use and using off-the-shelf technologies. Very excited to see what the Switch Pro will be like, though, next year, because we know that that's going to happen, too. But good question, Farmer. Question from Protect. Vic, how do you feel about Batwoman having record low ratings and a low audience score on Rotten Tomatoes? I don't care. I watched the first episode and I enjoyed a lot about it and a lot from it. I haven't seen the second episode yet. Got to check that out. But if the ratings aren't there for it, it's going to die. I mean, it's just like any other television property out there. I think that it's getting a bit crowded in the Arrowverse, and it's getting harder to make your distinctions. But I think it's pretty damn cool that I saw that logo floating around where it was the Batman versus Superman kind of esque logo, but it was the Batwoman Supergirl combo, and I thought that was pretty cool. I think it's pretty damn awesome that we live in a world where we have a Batwoman show and a Supergirl show, and I've loved the Supergirl show. Not every episode, but I've loved a lot of what they've done there. And I'm the dad of a daughter. I have a daughter. I want her to be able to watch shows and see female representation like that. I think that's super important and super cool. And frankly, these characters have existed in the comic universe for decades. So yes, they should have shows. And it's going to be clumsy building these shows. All of them start out pretty clumsy, and they kind of have to find their way, But the feedback comes in, and people get tweaked, and things get changed, and characters get recast sometimes, and showrunners get replaced. And I have a lot of faith in Greg Berlanti, who oversees all of that stuff. It's hard to make 24 episodes of a show in a season all hit. Flash is my favorite out of all of those, but like last season of The Flash was kind of disappointing. The fact that they put that I don't want to disparage the actor too much, but he was terrible. The guy from American Pie. I don't even know. He was one of the bad guys. I don't even know what his name was. He was in that Street Fighter movie too, and he was equally bad in that movie.
To explain.
What is his name? Chris Klein.
Cicada, yeah.
He was terrible, right? Cicada.
He was not great, yeah.
Yeah, right. Like there was no threat or menace. He just sounded like he's putting on his angry voice.
Yeah, very Christian Bale.
Yeah, it was bad. He was like wannabe Christian Bale. But yeah, I'm in for Batwoman. I'm going to keep watching it, and I hope that it gets better and better, and people like it, and the ratings go up. And I like Ruby Rose as a performer. As a person, like when I've seen her in interviews and stuff like that, I think there was interesting visual casting there. But yes, she needs to get more comfortable leading a show and performing, in that role. And she will. That's what happens you give these people time and they get better at it. Question from Danny Johnson. Any news on Tommy T's project? I know that he's in Dubai, and there's going to be some new announcements in television stuff coming up very soon. That way, like probably this weekend, there's going to be some stuff percolating. They're still a year away. We've texted, and the plan is for him to come up here with a bunch of Intellivisions and come to our cafe space, and we'll flood the room with people and televisions and Intellivisions and let people test it out, and we'll ask people what they think, and I'll get right into it. That'd be an amazing hour, which I really want to put together. Okay, this is the...
Maybe not entirely, but that's for the best. Back on topic.
Protect, I think there's other battles for you to fight out there, pal. Let's
Looks like it leads towards the main.
Okay, Chris Klein, was amazing in Street Fighter. I like that. How well does the Amico fit in his pants? That's a good comment. That is a good question, and that is an existential question to end the show on. How well does the Amico fit into Tommy Tallarico's pants? Thoughts on Game Pass? I will have some thoughts on Game Pass in the next episode of EP Live. Our next episode of EP Live, we are going to have the developers of the brand new Plants vs. Zombies game that's out on Friday. They're coming in on Friday. We're going to find out about the game and the development and the franchise. Very excited about that, so please come back and join us at the VFS Cafe at 390 West Hastings if you're in Vancouver, or watch the stream online. But we're going to dive into that, and we'll have some new review content, and we'll kick off the weekend in style. How does that sound? All right, you guys, that's going to do it for our show. Thank you for watching and subscribing. Have you dug this?
Yeah, it's really good.
It's pretty cool, right? Fits on a Switch.
It's a good port.
Thanks for all of your support. You guys rock. Play forever.